Next, I'd like to touch upon contrast and uniformity. And contrast enables us to focus on one element versus another. And we also said that lack of contrast causes the eye to bounce around without settling on anything in particular. Lack of contrast gives the impression that everything is of equal importance and therefore nothing stands out. Contrast performs three essential functions. First, it draws the user's attention to the essential components of the interface, the most important things, the most important options, the most important activities. It also helps the user understand the relationships between the navigational elements and the content. Not only how I get from point A to point B, but what I can expect to find at point B. Contrast also communicates hierarchy and importance within and across multiple sets of information. Okay, it helps us establish what's of primary importance to us, what's going to be most useful to us, and what stuff may be relevant, but it's not absolutely necessary for us to look at or deal with. So contrast in that way goes a long way in establishing information priority. One of the most important things contrast does is it creates visual differences, and we pay attention to those differences. Contrast can make things that we really need to see stand out. It brings things to our attention. Here's an example. When you get an error message on the screen and it looks like this, there's no way you can ignore it. Contrast, in this case the red and white, in comparison to everything else, makes this error message disruptive, makes it interruptive, makes it stand out, and it absolutely demands our focus until we deal with it. And that's ideally what a good error message should do. It should get your attention and say, hey, something happened, and I need you to deal with it right now. So that's a really great use of contrast. Here's another example where an online retail site is using visual contrast to call attention to the things that they want to promote most. In this case, it's an advertisement for spring and summer apparel. Notice that this very large image area contrasts sharply against the background. Now, it's not hard black, it's not this total black and white contrast, but in comparison to the white background, this box really stands out. And because of its size as well, it gets our attention first. So if we happen to be female, we're focusing on the thing that is potentially most important to us. And also, we're focusing on the thing that the creator, the retailer, wants us to focus on. So that's another way contrast is used very purposefully to draw attention to things. Here's another example. A confirmation dialogue that's confirming a potentially destructive action. Okay, you're about to delete something, and the system is saying, hey, that's dangerous. If you do this, you'll never get it back. Are you sure you want to do this? That's an instance where contrast, again, is important because we want the user's sole attention to be on this box. Notice how everything behind it is sort of grayed out. That's known as a modal dialog box, which some of you are probably familiar with. But the reason it works so well and the reason it's become so widely adopted is because it focuses our attention on the issue or item of interest at hand. In addition to contrast, we also make use of uniformity, whose job it is to enable contrast and enable change while keeping certain elements from overwhelming people. Okay, when that change happens, when content changes, when you go to a new screen, when you're stepping through a sequence of events, you want certain things to stay the same so that there's an element of sort of stability, security, right? The person feels comfortable executing the change because certain elements of their surroundings are staying the same. Think of it like, following a path in the woods and there are markers every so often. Those markers are consistent, they're displayed in a consistent interval, and they give you some reassurance that you're on the right path. Uniformity works the same way. As an example, take a look at this layout from the Capgemini website. There's an underlying grid structure to its layout that looks like this. All right, so we've got 6 main sections. And of those sections, there are certain elements that change. This large photo and text on the left, these 3 areas of content on the right, and this sort of focus piece on the bottom. That's stuff that changes. However, as that happens, the layout stays the same. The essential grid system that's used throughout does not change. The navigation is always in the same place. The featured content area in the middle left is always in the same place. The three elements on the far right that change are always in the same place. The feature element in the bottom, it's always occupying that same space. Okay, so there's a degree of familiarity that happens that keeps us comfortable even though the content is changing. Uniformity across design elements also allows us to apply them consistently and recombine them into new designs as the site or the app grows. As we add screens, as we add features, as we add functions, we have a precedent, we have a set of design patterns that are already established to allow the user to have some familiarity, even though they're doing something different that they've never done before. The overall layout, the organization, the mechanics of how things work remain the same. And again, I go back to a set of design patterns for the Android operating system. All the controls that you see here are used consistently throughout every element of the OS. So if the next iteration comes out in a month and they've added some new features and new functionality to the system, they will be executed visually in the same way. They will use these same icons, these same controls. The sliders will look the same way. The keyboard will look the same. The way fields highlight will look the same. Okay, all those things are kept consistent and kept uniform, so that as users, we're able to build on our prior experience with the app, with the system, to easily use whatever new features and functions come our way.